Hi, this is John Rowell for the Rowell Report. Today is Friday, October 31st, 2025, and I started to think about giving a report today on some updates that are going on in the Russia-Ukraine war, but I thought, you know what? So much of the taxpayer dollars from the United States is going over to basically fall into a bottomless pit, which is called Ukraine. Once it goes in there, it'll never come out, and it certainly will not come back to the taxpayer. I thought maybe a more important topic of which I could address is what it's like to be the 2.5%. And so, who is the 2.5%? The 2.5%, of course, is the 50% of the United States which shares 2.5% of the nation's wealth. So, and if you live in another country, you probably fit in somewhere in the lifestyle and within the uh, purchasing power of the U.S. 2.5%. So, and then who are the other people? Well, we all know who the top 10% are. They are those who basically control and enjoy 2/3 of the nation's wealth. So we have a smaller group, which is um, basically 40%, which shares 30% of the wealth. So you have basically the uh, lower classes and middle class, or what used to be the middle class. Then you have the upper class and the very wealthy. So um, if you're the 2.5%, you're probably wondering, hey, why are our roads so poorly maintained? I'm avoiding potholes when I go home pretty much the whole way, and some potholes I can't even avoid, so I get this thud, 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 and I'm listening to some program on my phone or some podcast, and there's a lot of road noise because the roads aren't very good in the United States. Certainly, they're better than a lot of other countries, I have to admit. I've been to Poland, to Mexico, to Spain, um, to Germany. I've driven in Italy. So, the U.S. roads aren't half bad. But when you go to see a really high quality road, like in Germany, like in the Autobahn, you really understand the difference between uh, a high quality road and a medium quality road. I wouldn't say mediocre, but medium quality road. So basically, um, on the Autobahn, you can drive 80 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, and you don't feel the road at all. You don't feel, the ups and the downs, and you don't feel these, like all these imperfections to the road that have this constant drone of tires hitting against imperfections in the road. You drive along and you basically are wondering what's going on because you've never had this experience before. You can go at high speeds and you can drive safely because the roads are flat, smooth, and they're very well maintained. So that is the Autobahn. And if you've been on the Autobahn, you know that it's a very safe road to drive on, because it's very well constructed and then very well maintained. For some time, I lived in Poland, And when I was driving from Poland into Germany at that time, they were still expanding the Autobahn because um, East Germany had united with West Germany. So the East German roads didn't have, a modern Autobahn, um, which, they were still building large stretches of the Autobahn in what used to be East Germany. So then come back here to the United States, and if you're driving at nighttime, there's very little paint on the road. You get a lot of, imperfections, not exactly potholes, but certainly they make a thud sound, and you feel the car, kind of shake and move a little bit side to side, something you would never have on the Autobahn in Germany. So then you say, well, what are the bad roads in the United States have to do with the war in Ukraine? Well, it's very easy. Our taxpayer money is bundled up and is doled out to I don't know how many countries in the world, so that the United States can maintain its control and its hegemony over all of these countries and areas. And the United States is constantly trying to expand its power and influence throughout the world. And so, a country like China isn't worried about expanding its hegemony. It isn't worried about we win, you lose, which is the obsession of the people on Wall Street. So they take a certain percentage of their GDP and they invest it into infrastructure. So instead of foreign wars, toppling governments, paying off corrupt politicians, filling somebody's bottomless pit with an endless stream of billions of dollars that just goes in one direction, never comes back. So this is very unproductive money. It doesn't enrich the United States. It doesn't benefit us in any way. Um, so you know, going back to this whole concept of the 2.5%, more than likely you are part of the 2.5%. You are part of those who go and ask yourself, hey, what happened to the dollar menu in McDonald's? Or why does a hamburger cost $15? Um, why do I go and get some food for my family that basically just gives them food for one meal and it's like $45? Why? Because uh, our government is not worried about um, supply, demand, prices that benefit the consumer. They're only interested in the top, um, basically, the top 40%. So again, you go back, who are the top 10%? Well, that's um, your Bill Gates and company, all those who are, the uh, Mark Zuckerberg. You can, name them all off, and it's certainly not their fault that the situation in this country is this way. Um, but now the system has been created to maintain the wealth among a small group of people. And so the bottom 2.5%, then now you're wondering, hey, why isn't there paint on the roads? Why am I dealing with all these potholes? Why are there all these recalls? Salmonella in beef, in in our food supply in so many different areas, whether it's meat or vegetables. Um, so then going back across the globe to Ukraine, what are we doing in Ukraine? If let's say Ukraine wins. Let's just throw out a fantasy theory that Ukraine manages to mount a miraculous and amazing, um, uh, counterattack, and would push Russia out of their pre 2022 borders. And the people in Kiev are dancing for joy and are so happy and are, saying, America's the best. Thank you so much, Uncle Sam. Okay, well, how has that benefited you in your life, in your pocketbook? You said, oh, freedom has won, democracy has won. Well, I have bad news for you. It's neither freedom nor democracy, but let's just say, going back again to throw out this fantasy idea that Ukraine is a paradise of freedom and democracy and human rights and the purest human values that have ever existed. Let's say they won this war. What would it bring you? What would it bring the world? It would bring us nothing. In fact, um, then we would be having to put out of our pocketbook, or out of our bank account, basically the whole restoration of Ukraine, their cities, their streets. We would be elevating all the oligarchs that we want back into power, to give them money to set up their you know, uh, corrupt political system so that they always win elections and they never lose. Um, so this basically doesn't create any opportunity for the United States. It doesn't increase our our GDP. It doesn't put more money into your pocketbook. Um, Now let's say Russia were to win in Ukraine. Oh my goodness, Russia were to win. Oh, the autocratic leader is going to take over this fledgling democracy that's struggling to breathe. It's suffocating under this autocracy to its east. Um, well, let's say Russia wins and gets all the way to the Polish border. Do we lose? Are you suddenly out money? Well, of course, everything we gave to Ukraine will be lost, but we already knew that coming into this because this is a corrupt country. The money will just go there and it'll go into somebody's pocket, probably into somebody from the United States who's involved there in the military industrial complex, who's involved with all these arms sales and all that. So basically, it's going to enrich, the if Russia were to lose, these people who would otherwise would have been able to provide Ukraine with more weapons and military equipment and blah blah blah, they would be out a client. But in the end, does that affect you at all? Does that bring you any more money into your pocketbook or any less? It doesn't. It's irrelevant. And so, um, the United States has deindustrialized. Why? Was it China's fault that we didn't deindustrialize? Was it India's fault? Was it I don't know. We have to find somebody out there to blame, But anyway, let's just take China. Is it China's fault that the United States deindustrialized, or is it Mexico's fault? No. The ones who move the companies um, or the production from the United States to somewhere else were all U.S. businesses. Um, and this brings me to my last point and why the war in Ukraine is basically irrelevant to your pocketbook, is that what rules everything is Wall Street. So every quarter, the companies that have stocks on Wall Street need to put out a report on their earnings and losses. And then there are a myriad of financial um gurus and analysts who will go through with a microscope every single number which they put in that report, and they will find out whether the company is improving its efficiency and whether it's improving its long-term earning. So there is a very good way to maintain increase in earning, and that is to lower the cost of production. So um, that way, your even if your sales stay the same, your costs to produce those sales go down. So anyway, in Wall Street, their main focus is that each company um, improves its efficiency, and every quarter has better earnings, has earnings growth. And so if they don't have earnings growth, if they're earning less, then there could be a sell-off in their stock, and that would be a really bad thing for the CEO or CFO of a company, because then somebody's gonna get the walking paper and go. So you can see, um, there's all this pressure on U.S. businesses to increase its efficiency. So the first step of increasing their efficiency, of course, was to get their company the heck out of the United States, because in the U.S. they have to pay, good salary. They probably offer benefits like health and life and dental and vision. So they made the move to get out, and then now that they move their company out of the United States to Mexico, to China, to somewhere else, then now they need to worry about all these other efficiencies, about transport costs, about reducing the number of people it takes to manage that production and sales, and to um, come up with is increased efficiency, which Wall Street is looking for. So basically, um, if we want to restore the American dream, so to speak, what is the American dream? It is a well-paid job with benefits, time for vacation, and enough money not only to take care of your expenses, but also to save and to um, be able to improve oneself. So, anyway, this becomes impossible when all the forces, market forces, are trying to cut out as many employees and as many costs as possible. So, um, you can see in companies like Amazon, the planned cuts that are going to take place. All this is not going to benefit the American lifestyle. But we go back to this whole thing of the 2.5%. If you are the 2.5% and you wonder about, why is the culture and society in the United States deteriorating? Why don't people have money anymore? Um, why is there such a rat race just to break even? Why isn't there paint on the roads? Why aren't there more lighting on the roads? Why are so many potholes? Why haven't we updated our air traffic control system, which is old and decrepit? Um, and it could go on and on and on. You could just add the items to the list. But anyway, so if the American lifestyle continues to deteriorate, good paying jobs are being replaced by being exported overseas or by a robot or AI, then what direction is this country going in? And if they were going in the wrong direction, then why are we worrying so much about hegemony, about maintaining the American empire, about, you know, controlling China and keeping, you know, keeping China on a leash? Why are we so worried about um, regime change in Russia or in Moldova or in Romania? Um, why are we, you know, going into countries like um, Libya and Syria and Iran, and we're bombing, bombing them and trying to destroy their societies and trying to take control of their governments? Why are we going to all that work? I mean, in the end, it doesn't benefit you, it doesn't benefit me. And, we're just, when we do take control of these countries, then now we're taking more money away from building this country and sending it overseas to maintain this fictitious, um, paradisical state of things, kind of like the green zone in Baghdad, um, or, all this kind of pseudo green zone in Kabul, Afghanistan. Um, and, so when we win, we lose. And you can see that things aren't getting better in this country, they're getting worse. Prices are going up. The government is trying to mask all these price increases by bringing other things down, because in the end, they use all these different metrics to figure out what inflation is. But for the ordinary consumer, that prices are going up. So um, if the United States, uh, which is fighting this proxy war in Ukraine against Russia, were to win, who would lose? You would. And so I think you should be rooting for Russia. Even if you don't like them, even if you watch these videos and say that's an autocratic regime, they don't allow human rights, and and democracy doesn't exist. It's a fable. Um, presented. You're repeating the Kremlin talking points. So finally, about Russia, I've never been there. I really don't know anyone for Russia. I just see the news, and I know what the U.S. did in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, um, and of course what we did in Vietnam, in Afghanistan, and the tremendous amount of money which just went out the door and never came back, didn't benefit anyone. So what are we doing? Why are we rooting for Ukraine to win? If in the end they win, then that country's going to require probably trillions of dollars, increasing our national debt, and then more jobs will be sent from the United States to Ukraine. If Russia wins, Russia will provide the jobs. They will put in the infrastructure. They will rebuild the buildings. They will rebuild the schools, the hospitals. They will restore order in that country and what I call democracy, which is people being able to decide without Western money and Western hegemony trying to manipulate everyone like puppets on some strings. So, anyway, I think it's something that you should think about. You know, you're rooting for Ukraine. Well, think about the consequence. Think about the day of tomorrow. If they were to win, even if they eventually will come up with an agreement and they'll split basically the country in half, that half that's left, then now it's gonna basically be the United States, whether it's the World Bank, the IMF, the Pentagon, the State Department. They have a million avenues for money to arrive into Ukraine, and they're gonna build up once again this oligarchic uh, uh, state, and they will focus a lot of their money on a key city, like the U.S. did in Iraq. They focused on Baghdad. In Afghanistan, the U.S. focused on Kabul. In Ukraine, they're going to focus on Kiev, and they're going to build big, beautiful steel and glass buildings. And you say, wow, progress. This is freedom and democracy. So I think you should take a look at, the situation in this country, the 2.5% of all that money, which should be invested in this country to build it up as a country which provides promise to people here in the United States, and that money is going overseas. They don't see the problems here. They don't see what happens with the person who's fighting from day to day to try to make ends meet. They only see projects. They only see uh, expansion, and all that requires money. And it's money instead of going to you or to me or to build up infrastructure in this country to make this country a better place. That's going overseas to basically, um, continue a fantasy, uh, a fairy tale. So anyway, um, my last point here on the video is that now it looks very clear that the Ukrainian military uh, probably doesn't even have a year left in it. The country is running out of money. They're scrambling to try to find money. They're trying to do some kind of weird reparation loan, 140 billion to Ukraine to sustain it. But for the next 3 years, they're going to need about 400 billion. You're like 400 billion. Where did that go? Where's that going to go? But anyway, all that 400 billion, whatever, eventually, the United States is the backstop to all of this. NATO is basically the United States and a small part UK and France, basically the victors, the Western victors in World War II, yeah, which, control all these other countries and tell them what to do and when to do it. So basically, um, the United States is going to be the backstop for all these projects. And so you're going to see a continual deterioration in this country. And we know that the debt will continue to rise. And, of course, that money isn't invested in the United States, it's going all over the place, everywhere. They'll find a project in Antarctica if they need to, or in the North Pole. Maybe they'll build a big home for Santa Claus, but they don't want to invest it in this country because it doesn't go to the right people. And in the end, there isn't any control valve to keep things from deteriorating in this country. The U.S. companies need to continue to increase their efficiency, and so they will continue to cut costs. And you know who gets cut? You and me. Our benefits will get cut, and pay will either stay the same or rise very slowly. And in the end, all those people who make all that money, they don't care either about this country. They just want to make sure that their numbers on Wall Street are solid and they show a great efficiency and an earning increase. So anyway, I think that the best thing that can happen to the U.S. taxpayer is for Ukraine to lose, to Ukraine to collapse, for Russia to win. And like I say, Russia will rebuild Ukraine, their infrastructure, their schools, their hospitals, their bridges, their roads. They will provide jobs. They will provide health care. And that would be the best thing for the United States. Now you can say, well, I don't agree with you. You're just dishing out Kremlin talking points, but take a look at the reality. Um, all the money that goes out towards Ukraine could be invested in this country, right? And why isn't it? Because the people running the show, the top, uh, you can say the top 10% plus another group of people, um, who are basically a very small minority in this country, are making all the decisions, are pulling all the strings, and basically, in the end, the United States is slowly going down that foxhole into that pit from which it won't be able to come out because when our debt gets to a certain point, we're not even going to be able to pay. Um, we're basically going to default on the debt, and then things will start to get really complicated from there. And so, if you're working now and you think 20 years, I don't need to worry because in 20 years I'll retire and I'll have a fixed income, and what happens in the country really isn't going to affect me. But if the country was to, uh, you know, uh, create this crypto economy and put all their marbles, all their eggs in one basket for the crypto economy, and that cryptocurrency was to collapse, then, you know, there could be financial disaster in the horizon. So basically, this is a long social commentary on my part, but I think you should understand why it's so important for Russia to win, Ukraine to lose, and it's nothing against the Ukrainians. I know that there's a lot of people who support Ukraine and feel that that this is a democracy, an ideal democracy that everyone should follow. But you know, look at the real situation that's going on. This war is being run from Germany by NATO generals who make the most outlandish decisions that have meant the death of so many Ukrainian soldiers, and basically have um, created the situation in which Ukraine is now in a spiral and will basically collapse. So um, this is what all our billions and trillions of dollars get us. Another war which we basically lose, and the money that we put into it, we lose. And there's some winners behind the scenes, and they win, they get richer, and the American consumer is life gets worse and worse. So I think we should start rooting for the people who are would cut off this expansionary hegemonic state from continue to expand, and then maybe eventually these politicians would realize that they need to take that money which they're sending overseas and invest it in the United States. So basically, that's my report. Wow, over 30 minutes. My apologies, but I think with this, I can kind of explain to you why it is I think Russia needs to win, so you understand too. And if you agree, disagree, please leave a commentary below. And I look forward to seeing you back for future videos. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you. Well, actually, next week early next week I'm gonna have a little bit of a complicated schedule, so I'm not too sure about posting. I have to travel, so I might be posting along the way at some rest stop, and I can tell you about the roads, about the U.S. infrastructure, um, which is not good. But anyway, I wish you all the best. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.